Well, welcome to the She's4Sports, partnered in here at Ryerson University in FCAD is the GXS Lab. It's a partnership that we started about 1.5 years ago. This is the kickoff to the Be Bold event series, and this first event is She Can Coach. We're very excited to have you all here tonight. We have a sellout of, I think there's 105 people, so we've got sold out tickets, which we're very happy about. We've got a combination of, I see some people in the audience that came to our last event, which is phenomenal. And we've got a number of our Ryerson students, but it's also, we'd like to welcome everybody if this is your first time to Ryerson. The facility that you're in is FCAD, which stands for the Faculty of Communication and Design. And within this exists the Global Experiential Sport Lab, the GXS Lab. And this is a culmination of interdisciplinary research hubs that you're sitting in called the Catalyst. So we're quite excited to have you in this space, which is fairly new as well. I'm pleased to share with you one of the reasons and the vision for why the GXS Lab decided to partner with Ianka Jess and She's4Sports. First of all, let's talk about Ianka. She is a trailblazer. She's a woman who cares tremendously about advocating for women in sport. She's genuine, she's authentic, and I couldn't think of a better partner to partner with than Ianka and She's4Sports. The things that, initiatives that Ianka is bringing forward to us are phenomenal, and I'm so happy that you have an opportunity to be part of this. And also to ultimately what we're trying to do is impact change for women in the sporting world. So Ianka Jess is passionate, she's compassionate about communications, and she empowers women and girls, and she's combined her love of sport with her love for communication in her professional world. She's4Sports is an online and events platform that gives women a larger voice. It's not just also about the event here tonight, but it's also about having a social online platform for us to be able to interact and engage with the various panelists that are here and Ianka. The interesting thing about Ianka is that she's also very much a strategic communications media relations person. She has supported various organizations and corporations like CIBC, Manulife, the City of Ottawa, and BMO. She likes to raise awareness about diversity in sports. She is a woman in leadership. We also have a woman here tonight that you're going to meet about breaking the glass ceiling, and we call it kicking glass and breaking, totally kicking ass, actually. And so how do we combine this with Ianka's passion? She's done speaking engagements at CIBC, Rotman Commerce Women's Leadership Symposium, and George Brown College. She's been featured on CBC Metro News and many other notable media outlets in our country on a national perspective as well here in local. We have a tremendous lineup here for you tonight, whom Ianka is going to introduce you to. And I also wanted to say that we were talking about this earlier in just a little soiree that we had with some of our speakers, and talking about She Can Coach and providing opportunities for women, no matter your diversity, no matter your race, no matter your age, no matter your ability, and no matter your gender, your sexual orientation, all the equal opportunity to have a place in sport like our males do. We also have phenomenal males in the room that are allies for all of us in seeing us help us support and make this change. So thank you very much for everyone for being here. And with that being said, I would like to introduce you to our She's4Sports founder and visionary, Ianka Jess.
Thanks for that warm welcome. That was awesome. And as Laurel said earlier, it's nice to see some faces of those of you who've attended before some of our events, some of you who've been on our past panels, and some new faces. You know, thank you so much for spending your time with us tonight. I know Toronto is that city where there's 1,001 events going on, so the fact that you're here, that's awesome and that's great. So thanks for joining us. You know, when I said to myself, what do I want to say to you guys, you know, outside of my bio and launching She's for Sports, and I really turned to our theme of be bold. And I was thinking, you know, how have I been bold or trying to live being bold throughout the time of running She's for Sports? For some of you who don't know, I launched She's for Sports in 2016. I started holding events in 2017, and here we are today, obviously, with all of you, and a great partnership with Laurel and Ryerson and the GXS Lab, Global Experiential Sport Lab. See, I practiced that. And things are going great. And the way that we are being bold, you know, outside of being a speaker series and amplifying the voices of diverse women in sports, is really impact. I want to measure She's for Sports' success on impact. The impact we're making on other women's lives, women who want to be in sports, young girls who see all of you guys who may be working in the sports industry and they want to be you, they want to have your jobs in the future, and they don't want to have to ask permission to be in those spaces. And last year, one thing that happened that really reminded me of why the platform and She's for Sports is needed, and these type of initiatives are needed, is a broadcaster called me and said, hey, I heard about your network, I heard about She's for Sports, and I have a job and I need to find a female basketball analyst. And they said, we heard about She's for Sports, do you know anybody? Well, of course I know. I've got a roster of great women who we featured on our panel and women who have been our allies pushing She's for Sports. And I said, let me get to my network, sent him an email of 4 people, and he called one of these women back, and she got a job. So She's for Sports is not just, you know, as I said, the speaker series and the digital content out there. We're impacting lives. We're mobilizing other women to do great things. We're amplifying their voices, and I really just can't wait to see what else She's for Sports is going to become in the years, you know, ahead of me. And really happy, as I said, to be partnering with Laurel. So you're in for a great discussion. And without further ado, I will introduce you to our wonderful panel. So first up is Dr. Jennifer Welter. Coach Jen Welter is best known as the first female coach to coach in the NFL as an assistant linebackers coach with the Arizona Cardinals. But what most people don't know is that Coach Jen broke into men's professional football as the first female to play running back in men's pro football. And that's huge.
Yes, in my 5'2" body, that's huge.
From that experience with the Texas Revolution, Coach Jen started her coaching career as a linebackers coach with the Revolution. Following the NFL, Dr. Jen Welter became the head coach of the first Australian women's national team, fielded in July 2017. She joined the advisory board of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. See, I was going to say hockey, but I caught myself. Pro Football Hall of Fame's Game for Life Academy, and wrote her first book, Play Big, Lessons in Living Limitless from the First Woman to Coach in the NFL. And we could talk to Jen about that book because I know you dropped a lot of gems in that book. Yeah. In 2018, Coach Jen focused on the importance of being a female role model in sports. She founded Gridiron Girls Flag football camps for girls and took the story digital by partnering with Toya to develop a series of Minecraft worlds titled Coach Jen. In December of 2018, Coach Jen set the stage for a powerful 2019 by partnering with Adidas for the Gridiron Girls camps and returning to men's professional football, joining the coaching staff of the Atlanta Legends as a defensive specialist. Prior to joining the men's game, Coach Jen had an amazing career in women's football, which included 2 gold medals with Team USA, 4 World Championships, and 8 All-Star selections. While playing football, Dr. Jen obtained her PhD in psychology. I'm like career goals, and a master's in sports psychology. Dr. Jen also has a BS in business from Boston College. Dr. Jennifer Welter. Next, I'll call up Kayla Alexander. Kayla Alexander is a Canadian basketball player for the Chicago Sky in the WNBA and a current member of the Canadian Senior Women's National Basketball Team. She also plays professional basketball overseas. When not playing basketball, Kayla is an artist who commissions an array of custom creations through her art business, K. Alexander Creations. She's also a published author and illustrator of her debut children's book, The Magic of Basketball, co-authored with her sister, Zakisha. The children's book follows Kayla's journey with the sport of basketball and the many gifts it has given her along the way. Kayla also volunteers through basketball camps as a coach, empowering girls in sport and helping them improve their confidence and game on and off the court. In her spare time, Kayla enjoys journaling, and her writing includes thoughts on her experiences, her faith in God, as well as current events and her travel experiences as a professional athlete. Kayla completed a Bachelor of Arts in Social Studies education from Syracuse University, where she majored in history and minored in French. So maybe we should be asking you some questions en français. Yeah, oui. Fun fact, Kayla will be heading to Belgium next month with the Canadian Senior Women's National Basketball Team to participate in a Tokyo 2020 qualifier game. Now, as I understand, if you guys win that game, you're headed to the Olympics.
So we have to finish top three.
Top three, yeah.
And then we'll be headed to Tokyo.
Wow. Next, I will call in Brittni Donaldson. Brittni Donaldson is an assistant coach with the Toronto Raptors and the youngest assistant coach in the NBA. She joined the Raptors organization in September of 2017 and worked on the analytics team and played an integral role in the Raptors' run to the NBA title. Did anybody go to the parade here? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. Her promotion to a coaching position makes her the first woman to be hired by the Raptors as an assistant coach and the 11th assistant coach in the NBA. In her role with the Raptors, she provides an analytical perspective for the coaching staff by using data-driven analysis, which helps the team to make more informed decisions. She also helps prepare the team by assisting with on-court workouts and creates scouting reports for the upcoming opponents. The native of Sioux City, said that right? See, didn't mess that one up. The native of Sioux City, Iowa, had a successful basketball career as a point guard at the University of Northern Iowa and received a bachelor's degree in statistics and actuarial science. You can tell us all about that, what that entails. Brittni also worked as a member of the Raptors coaching staff at the NBA Summer League in Las Vegas this offseason and served as an instructor at the Giants of Africa basketball camps in Tanzania and South Sudan. And the Giants of Africa Foundation is the one that was founded by Masai Ujiri. Brittni Donaldson. Shireen, are you still in there? Shireen Ahmed is a writer, public speaker, and award-winning sports activist who focuses on Muslim women and the intersections of racism and misogyny in sports. Her work has been featured and discussed in various media outlets. Her expertise is sought by major television and radio networks. She's part of the Burn It All Down feminist sports podcast team, the first feminist sports podcast that analyzes sports culture from an intersectional feminist lens. When she isn't watching soccer, she drinks coffee as a tool of resistance. I love coffee too. She's one of the 2019 TEDx Toronto speakers and is currently working on her first book. She lives in the Greater Toronto area with her family and her beloved cat. And this is our awesome panel. I'm just gonna ask you guys to scooch down one more seat. Yeah, I can't stand in these boots. So on that theme of being bold, for each of you, how have you been bold in your career so far? And what more do you want to be bolder in some of the things that you're trying to do? Shireen, I'll start with you.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Bold. I like to think I'm demure. Just joking. You can laugh now. I think this wasn't my first career. This is career number, I don't know what. I was a stay-at-home mom for a very long time. It's my proudest thing is to be a mom. Shout out to my kid over there. And I think coming into a profession so late was very daunting. Age, race, identity, all these things. But I'm relentless. And I think that's what it is. I think there's a way that we can appreciate. I mean, there it is. Women are considered relentless, right? Where men are just goal-oriented. So I think framing the way that we even talk about it, but just empowering ourselves to do it. Go out and do it. If you want to change your career at 40, do it. I started a team of podcasters when I was 40. So just don't limit yourself and be bold. I love the word bold. I think it's a great word.
Brittni?
Yeah, just to build off that, like going out and doing it, also not letting people tell you that you can't do it. You know, when I was a player, I was told I could never play again after having my 4th knee surgery. I didn't let that happen. I played again. So kind of just taking that same mindset into your professional career. Whatever somebody says, however somebody limits you, kind of put that in the back of your mind, but don't let it affect your actual decision. Let your passion drive what you're doing, and just do it.
Hello. For me, did I give you a little shock? For me, I would say to be bold is to use your voice. And I think that's one of the things that I love about basketball, because as a young girl, it really helped me to find my voice. I was a shy girl, did not like public speaking, didn't want to talk or speak up in front of people. I just wanted to shy away. And through basketball, in order to be a great basketball player, you have to be a great communicator. And I've learned through basketball to use my voice and to stand up for myself, whether it's on the court or off the court as well. And I think that's being reflected most recently, too, through the new CBA agreement that's taking place with the WNBA. So, yes, using your voice.
Dr. Chen?
I think using your voice is something that all of us would say, and it's also finding your voice, right? Not looking at what has always been done or how somebody else leads or what that means, but really having it resonate for you and using that in a way that is always bigger than just you. I would say that being the first is the hardest thing, is that you are the whole narrative at first, right? Your success or failure can determine whether or not, there would be a second female coach in the NFL, or a third or a fourth, or, I never wanted to be the reason that they said, oh yeah, we tried that once, and that's a no, right? And so realizing that who you are and what you do is great, but what is so much greater is what comes after, right? The ripple effects that it may cause, or the confidence it may give someone else to see, to read your book, to see you out on the court, to see you proudly wearing a shab, which used to not really be common to see. And now I'm like, yeah, girl, that's right, you wear it. Because I have friends who have suffered through that, right? And what that meant to them. And so have those conversations and look where you can move the needle in a conversation that someone else may not be having, right? A lot of people talk about the first in, the NFL. For me, this year, the coolest thing was being the first female in Madden. And it was based on a conversation that I had as a consultant with Madden, where I said, you are struggling in this because girls can't see themselves in your game. You have everything is about a sin of omission in football. You don't have to tell girls that they can't play, right? You show them because they can't see themselves playing anywhere. And if it's slow progress in the quote unquote real world, then maybe sometimes we have to move the virtual one. And that's what this was to me. But what was funny is the people at Madden didn't even necessarily realize it was a big deal, right? Like, there was no press release, like we have a female coach in Madden for the first time, right? Like, some of these things, being bold is even making sure that the conversation is making its way to the right people. Because just suffering in silence, where a lot of women just do, like we believe that strength is never admitting weakness, sometimes we have to admit where things are wrong so that we can really instigate change. Because you cannot fault somebody for doing nothing about something they knew nothing about. However, when they know, then now's the time to act, right?
We hear a lot from different critics and people saying, well, oh, last year was a great year for women, you guys should be happy. But there's still so much work to do. You want to celebrate the great things that are happening. We know the WNBA just, confirmed their new CBA agreement, and, there's still more work to be done. So how can we push to change that cultural mindset, as you said, so that when a young kid or even a male sees a panel of women, that's normal. A female referee, that's normal. How can we get to a place where we can help to shift the culture?
I would say we have to look at all angles of culture, right? So if it's, we want to see change in sport, that includes sport video games, it includes sport research, it includes sport media, it includes things as powerful and prolific as like hip hop culture, right? Like, are we dropping female names to the same extent that we are male names, or where are warm-up songs coming from, or do our videos, not only show like guys out there balling, but women as well, right? And I think making those suggestions and having them in a real way where we're creating allies and allegiances to have so many touch points in culture that it creates a new normal, right? If a little kid, I don't care if it's a boy or a girl, gets to play a video game and choose a female as a coach, it's not going to be such a stretch to have a female coach or to see her, courtside. And I think we need to look at all elements of culture and then find places that we can influence in a way that it's collective. And yes, we have made progress. And people always ask the question, is it fast enough? Look, patience is a virtue. So clearly I have lost my virtue. But it's also, it is something where you get to a tipping point, right? And it will be exponential. And we have to celebrate these things and highlight, the WNBA contract, but also be very real that women are still making more money playing overseas, right? And what does it look like? How do we bridge that gap? And for all of you watching, number one, follow women doing great things, highlight those stories, because the pushback I always get is you don't have the influence, right? Women in general, not me specifically, that the guys do, which means, is it the social reach? Is it the viewership? Is it those things? Well, every single person watching has the power to impact that through things like making intentional efforts to follow great women, share their stories, and take your dollars and make them make sense. What does that mean? Invest in businesses that are investing in women.
Shireen, I'll get you in on this as well through, I know you were talking about reinventing yourself through writing and your podcast and really advocating for women in sports and specifically advocating for Muslim women in sports. So how are you, through all of the vehicles and the things that you're trying to get your message out there through, how are you helping to change that culture?
Well, when respecting and taking the lead of women that have come before. One of the things I did want to mention about the WNBA, CBA, is that when it was tweeted out, it was not only, I remember on Good Morning America, Nneka was on Good Morning America to announce it. She also mentioned the struggle of women hockey players and women soccer players. So right away, you have a group of women that have achieved, on their way to achieving so much, but recognizing the struggles of other women. And this is something that's so incredible about women and non-binary folk as well, is that the understanding of those who are marginalized, who are still marginalized and struggling. Now for me, when I started writing about Muslim women in sport, it's kind of a niche thing, to be quite honest with you, but the way that conversations have transpired, the way that it cuts through race, it cuts through gender identity and sexual orientation, there's a lot to write about. And I think the reason that I started this, and to talk about bridging in the gaps, is because I think I'm one of the only Muslim, very identifiable Muslim women in this country. I was on the National the first time after the Women's World Cup, and I remember walking into the green room, and the other panelist was like, "Oh, so you're a fan?" And I was like, "No, I'm a writer." And he's like, "Oh, did you watch some of the World Cup?" I'm like, "I went to France."
You dropped the mic.
I covered it, for SB Nation, and have you heard of this place called The Athletic? I think it's the presumption when people see me, I'm not what they expect. But, to do that, and the other thing is to push the boundaries of what's considered acceptable in sports. Sports is one of the things, and I've always felt this way, it's a bridge for connecting and having conversations that make people really uncomfortable. We live in Canada, and we're not going to pretend that everything's great here because the Gong Show down south. No offense, Jen. But I think that the reality is that the conversation about race makes people very, very uncomfortable. And sports is a way to have that conversation and bridge it in a way that's very, very important. And yes, I'm a woman, but I am a brown woman. I'm a woman so there's layers of the conversation that needs to be had, but there's not always those people at the table. So having the conversations, finding your allies, and I think Laurel said this in the other room, that surrounding yourself by people who are your allies and can be your allies. There's a whole heck of unlearning that needs to happen too, myself included. I've had to unlearn so many things, but understanding, as Dr. Welter was saying, finding your voice as well. I'm still finding my voice.
Now we see all the statistics out there that we can visibly see there are no female head coaches across any of the major top pro leagues. We're seeing women being hired as assistant coaches in some sports. I know with basketball they've really made some strides with that. But why are we seeing such a slow trickle? And why haven't we got to a place where we're seeing, as I said, women as referees, women as assistant coaches, women as head coach, even in the varsity level, like the statistics are very low. What are some of the barriers that you're hearing women who want to get into coaching are facing? Brittni, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of different barriers. It's very nuanced. But one that I think we can talk about, and we talked about being bold and what that means to us, and it obviously takes an incredible amount of confidence and courageousness for a woman to, step into a space like this that's so male-dominated. They need a lot of support. They need to be very confident in themselves. They need to be prepared. Otherwise, they're not going to last. But what we don't really talk about enough, I think, is the people in the decision-making positions who are, giving these women opportunities. They also need to be incredibly bold and courageous, because it's not easy to give somebody that has never had that, somebody like them has never had the opportunity before. It's not easy to do that in a position of power. There's a lot of, ripple effects that could come along with it. And so the people that have impacted me the most in my career have predominantly been men, and they've been wonderful, and they've been extremely bold and courageous, and I think we need more. We need to change the narrative around, these men are being bold and courageous. They're not just giving in to this societal shift that everybody's trying to get on board with. They're actually doing a really, really, really great thing.
Kayla, did you want to add to that?
I think you hit it right on the head. With it starts at the top with decision makers being bold enough to hire women or take the chance on women. Also, one thing I'm going to come back to it because that's the space I play in right now, and I'm very proud of it. For the W, I know that we have a lot of female coaches there. We have a few head coaches who are female, and they actually take the chance of hiring former players and giving former players opportunities. So that's one thing I do appreciate about our league, is that we're constantly trying to give, or we constantly are giving opportunities to women who help build up the league and who played within the league. So I just think we need to see that outside of just not in the WNBA, but outside of our sport and just in the real world.
Can I add one thing to that?
You can, yeah.
So I think it's a really interesting, you made a really great point about, more women are becoming coaches, both for male and for female sports. But it's really interesting to me, the few women that are coaches, it's such a small space, but the few women that are coaches probably, if not certainly, played at a really high level. You look at the majority of coaches who are men, and
I've heard that.
not a lot of them played at a very high level. But that's okay. I was predominantly coached by men my entire life, and they were wonderful coaches, wonderful coaches. So I don't really know the answer, and it's just something I ponder a lot, why do we have to have that extra validation to even enter the space? Why do we have to say, we played this at a high level? You know how much, almost privilege is the word, you have to be able to play a sport at a very high level. There's a lot of things that have to happen, a lot of things that have to fall into place. Not everybody gets an opportunity, even if they were able to, even if they were skilled enough, even if they were passionate enough. It's a very, very, I am not thankful enough that I had the opportunity to play at the collegiate level. And so to discount all those people that didn't have that opportunity just because they're female, I don't think is fair, and I don't know if you guys have anything to add on that or have ever thought about that before, but why we need the extra validation when maybe
I was going to say,
our male
Jen has a lot to say about this.
Yeah.
I remember when I was hired by the Cardinals, and of course the narrative is, oh, it's a publicity stunt. I'd like to really kind of dig into that and see what a publicity stunt is, because if you took my gender off of my resume, would anybody have doubted the hire of a 4-time Super Bowl champion with 2 gold medals on Team USA, an 8-time Pro Bowler, and, oh, by the way, a master's in sports psychology and a PhD? No one would have questioned whether or not I was capable of getting an opportunity to coach. Oh, and by the way, I had already coached, and we lost in the championship with 2 coaches for a football team, by the way, 2. That's not heard of often, okay? But nobody would have questioned it if I was a man. If you just changed one element of that conversation, nobody would have said it's just a publicity stunt. And then, you know, of course, there was always the argument. It was like, well, she never played football. That's the one they go to. And I'm like, oh, first of all, have you done your research, right? Like, I've got way more rings than I know what to do with at times. But would you have said that? And then you go back to, well, there are a lot of great coaches who were men who never played, and yet your assumption is that I couldn't have played, right? So there are a lot of dynamics that go into these conversations as they're perpetuated. Who are we looking at? Where are we sourcing them from? And are we creating a feeder system that supports the development to be doing all of the right things all along the way, if that's the path that you might want? I know that there was a mental barrier for me 100% when I got offered my first coaching position and I was in arena football. And the coach said, you have to coach my football team. And I said, no. I said, excuse me? I said, no, girls don't coach football, and you want to throw me right into men's pro football? Like, I'm not going to do it. And he said, not a lot of guys are going to give you this opportunity. You're taking this job. And in fact, he did take it on my behalf and then told me about it later. So
that's bold.
It is bold. But we need to know that oftentimes women who are very capable may not see themselves in those positions. So this is where being a great ally comes into play, right? If you are a guy who has that, don't just assume that the woman will know to step up or to even ask. Like, I lovingly say, Wendell saw something in me before I even saw it in myself, and he drop kicked me to success. So we need a whole lot more drop kicks in here, right?
Yeah, do you want to add something, Shireen?
Yeah. And I just want to add, for like, in my experience at a very minimal level, though, it wasn't just about coaching pro. I was coaching a middle school girls team in a private Islamic school. But still, what are your qualifications? Well, I've been playing soccer since I was 5. I played for the University of Toronto. What did you do? Like, what more do I have to do? So it's not even at pro levels. It's our resumes or our experience or lived experience have been, are questioned constantly. Am I qualified? Yes. Not only am I qualified, I think I'm still one of the most memorable coaches for these young girls who maybe at that time is the only sport they're going to play. Maybe that's the only time in their lives they will ever experience sport in this manner, but they did. And they did it with me. I was a technical coach for my daughter's, she's a rep player, when she was 8 or 9. And the first person they looked up when they needed to be explained the offside rule to was me. So when they move forward, they think of a woman in a hijab explaining the offside rule to them. And they get it. And they're like, they're not connecting like a white, cishet, able-bodied man with that coaching. They're connecting me with it. So it's opening their mind. And you don't even, the backlash of the parents was that phenomenal. Like, I actually had a dad stop me and ask me if I was familiar with any of the players in, like, an Arsenal, which is fine. Like, I'm a gunner. It's fine. And I just, I was like, yeah. And then I was basically like, so we're going to, he wanted to co-coach with me because he didn't think that I had the qualifications. So I basically was like, I'm Arsene Wenger. You're who's like Jose Mourinho. This is how I explained it. And then he's like, okay. All of you for the reference, it's just like, Jose Mourinho is basically Cruella de Vil of like the Premier League. But anyways, whatever level we are, we will get questioned. Whether it's a middle school girls team or whether it's pro, we will get questioned.
Now, each of you have coached, obviously at different levels. I know, Brittni, you were able to be a part of the Giants of Africa coaching team. Can you share a little bit about, what are some of the things the girls actually said to you after the coaching program was done, and like how impactful that was for them to be participating in that?
Yeah, you're talking the girls over in Africa?
Yes.
Yeah. So I got the opportunity to go to Africa and go to 2 different countries and be one of the coaches for Giants of Africa. And one of the camps was co-ed, so there was young girls and boys, and the other one was just boys. It's very important for young girls to see women in a coaching position or in positions you don't normally see women in, but it's just as crucial for young men to see it too. I think you know, and that's why I didn't say no to that. I was actually very excited to do just an all-boys camp because, you know, if you expose them to that at a young age, like I learned something from a female when I was little that helped me, that is going to trickle down into so many different other areas of their life, and you don't even realize it. But, you know, it was just, there wasn't a lot really said, and there didn't really need to be, but just to have that connection with those young kids. And they were just there to learn basketball, right? Like, I think when you work in the professional sports world, you get really caught up in all the other extra stuff that goes on, and you get taken away from the actual sport and the actual reason you started pretty easily. And that was kind of a regrounding moment for me. Like, this is why I'm doing this. The passion of these kids really, like, reamped my own passion. So I think it's really great, yeah, not to just pigeonhole yourself into thinking like I want to coach professionally, or I want to like really think about why you're doing it. And for me, being able to connect with young kids and teach them just the very basics of the sport really rejuvenated my purpose as to why I like to coach.
And Kayla, you know, obviously for all of us, representation is huge, you know. Many female athletes, you know, when they're doing their interviews, they talk about if you can't see it, the kids can't believe it. They you know, they don't see that normalized sort of view, whether it's through marketing, whether it's, you know, on the bus shelter of a woman, you know, in sports. Those are not visuals that you see all the time. So how important is representation for you when you're, you know, helping out at these basketball clinics and coaching these young girls?
I think it's crucial. And I love that you took on that coaching position and we're coaching like young boys to show them like this is normal, so that as they come up, they see like it's normal to have a woman as a head coach or to coach me in sports. Yeah, it's crucial because I think it just helps kids to visually see like, okay, if I see someone who looks like me, who's doing something that I enjoy doing, that it becomes more of a reality for them. Like, oh, okay, this is something that I can truly aspire to be, or something that I can actually go after when I get older. So. It's important, and I'm just thankful that I get the opportunity to just go out there, whether it's with young boys, young girls, many who look like me, and to show them, like, yes, this is something that you can do if you are truly passionate about it.
You can make it to the WNBA,
yes.
right?
Yeah, it's like this is a reality. Like, even though the WNBA is in the USA, or we play professional basketball overseas, a young Canadian kid can make it. So I think that's important for young kids to see. And I just wish that we would show that more in our media and market that more, because young kids need to see it.
Jen, I know the programs that you've developed for girls with flag football, they're near and dear to your heart. Can you talk a little bit about sort of what else they learn in your programs outside of the physicality and the athletic side of it, but the mental side, the confidence side, like what else are they learning at the camps?
So I started the girls' football programs because I looked around and I realized that there were no football camps for girls. Didn't exist. Didn't exist anywhere in the United States, right? Here you talk about American football, that's what they say. It's America's game, and it's only for half, at most, of America. Football is the only sport that doesn't have parity at any level, from peewees to the pros. And when I even went out and marketed and said that I wanted to do, you know, football for girls, all of the, like, business, girls don't want to play football. Like, that's not gonna work. And I was like, first of all, girls have never had the opportunity to make a decision if they want to play football or not. They've never gotten to get out there and learn the basics and say this is for me at a very young level, unless somebody else was doing it or they were, you know, bold enough to step into a boys' camp or play onto a boys' team. And so when I go in and do these camps, it's, first of all, the main message is there is no game you cannot play and no field you do not belong in or on. It's confidence through football. You don't throw a ball like a girl or a boy. You either throw a football the correct way or you don't. You either have a tight spiral or it's a duck. It is not gender specific. You know, you either catch a ball and throw up your diamonds because you're worth that, or you don't catch it and it hits the ground. It's not a girl or a boy thing. And yet, for these girls, most of them have never had the opportunity to be taught those. And then if they go into a co-ed situation, they're automatically behind the 8 ball because the boys have been socialized to learn a lot of those things earlier, right? So then the assumption is you can't do it because you're a girl, and the truth is you're actually not doing it because they've been coached and you haven't. Again, not going back to gender. So at first when I did the camps, I really wanted them to just be football. And everybody was like, Jen, I hope they're really getting some of you in that too. And I'm like, well, I'm coaching them, yes. And they were like, no, I mean the attitude, right? Like, we need a little bit more of Coach Jen in these girls, like, to prepare them for their life. And so I added that as an element to the camp, and each one is slightly different. But, you know, some of the things are, like, I remember Miami was one of my favorite camps because I'm from Florida, and we did it with Uncle Luke at Liberty City. So it was Title I area. At one point, there were 8 cop cars in the end zone. And one of my players from the Atlanta Legends, who was also from Florida, came down, and he was like, welcome to Florida, coach. And I was like, hometown, right? Like, and these girls came out, and a lot of them were in high school, and they were actively playing. And they had such a chip on their shoulder, I couldn't even stand it. Like, I loved it, but I hated it at the same time. Because I was like, I can't coach you like this because you don't want it. You're not open. So I left those girls in a linebacker stance for about 7 minutes at the beginning of the camp just to set the tone, because if they got up and they stood up, they were quitting on themselves. That had nothing to do with where you were from, what you were given, what your resources were. This is just you versus you. Because if you won't invest in you, if you won't fight for you, how am I going to do it? And I'll tell you what, it changed the focus of the camp. But then when the same group of girls, like the older girls, came to the receiver station, which I was teaching, which I loved to teach, even though I was a linebacker most of my career, because the feeling of catching a football and doing it right is special, and most girls haven't had access. And when they came up, you know, they already saw it, and I was like, all right, which one of you, tell me right now, is a lockdown, catch every ball thrown to you receiver? Every single one of them raised their hand. I was like, great, you don't need me, I'm leaving. And they were like, well, what do you mean? I said, if I asked that question to guys in the NFL, they would not raise their hand. Because a coach is here to make you better. And if you already know anything or everything, then I'm useless. And I want to ask you how many times you've been coached by an NFL coach before. And they were like, never. I was like, so would you like to rephrase your answer, please? You know, and there were little things like adjusting one of the girls' stances by an inch, which made her that much faster off her get off. She's like, why has nobody ever told you that? I said, because I'll fight for inches for you. And you deserve that in every area of your life. So to me, coaching in that capacity, whatever it is, whether it's, you know, the pros or the little babies, it's not just the skill that you're teaching them, it's the approach that you're taking with them and the impact that you'll have through the attention that you give is the best compliment you can give, right? Like, making you better is the best compliment a coach can give. It's uncomfortable sometimes, you may not want it, but guess what? If I'm not talking to you, I've given up on you, right? That means there's nothing else that can be done. So I try and be very intentional and tell all of my coaches, they will not learn everything about football today, but they will always remember the way that you make them feel, and you will change lives today if you decide that you want to change a life today.
Each of you have played sports, whether high school or at the varsity level and obviously pro. What are some things that you learned when you were in sports at a varsity or high school level that you are actually using now or that has helped you in the coaching roles that you're in right now? Brittni, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I learned so much through sport. I mean, pretty much every valuable major life lesson I've learned came from sports. And, you know, every hardship, not everyone, but a lot of the major ones in my life came through sport as well. So it's given me a lot of good, a lot of bad, but it's taught me so much. And I guess there's a couple that really stick with me that I still continue to use. And the first one is like, next play. You don't have time to sit and if something happens or if you're discouraged or you face a barrier or something doesn't go your way, you can't sit on it for too long or things will just start to accumulate. You turn the ball over in a basketball game and you sit and pout about it, they're gonna go dunk on your head. You know, there's just, you gotta react, you gotta get back, you gotta play defense. So I think carrying that into my professional career, you know, things aren't always gonna go your way. And so having the conviction to know that you are where you're supposed to be because you've worked really hard to get there. and you're gonna make a mistake every now and then. People aren't gonna like what you do every now and then, but you gotta keep working, you gotta keep showing up. That's something sport taught me. And then just the general like discipline, leadership, communication, all of that stuff still applies. But another thing that's interesting that sport taught me was, I didn't always love all the coaches I had. I didn't always love all the teammates I had. So navigating, how to deal with different dynamics that maybe you don't agree with, but still trying to remain cohesive and get this job done. You're all there to get the same job done. You're all there working for the same goal. So really navigating like social situations and like kind of like Kayla said, like I found my voice in sport. I was super shy as a kid. This type of thing would give me major anxiety. But sport really helped me find myself and give me that confidence and give me that voice and really express myself in ways I never could before. So there's so much. I could go on and on about what sport has done for me.
I'm going to piggyback off of you because you're hitting everything. Every time I talk with young kids or even to parents, I always tell them, like, put your kids in sports because, yes, they're going to gain a new skill in a different sport, but the life skills that they're going to take away, they're going to take it for the rest of their lives. You hit on a lot of things. One that resonates and has stuck with me a lot has been overcoming failure. I've failed countless times in basketball, whether it was going out for the national team and failing at making that team twice, or just failing at trying a move for the first time, or like just failing on the court, whether it's trying to make a move, missing an assignment, just learning gaps along the way. Basketball has taught me how to be okay with failing as long as I'm giving my best effort and knowing, okay, failure isn't the end of the world. It's, okay, a learning experience. I'm learning from this experience. What can I take from this so I can be better next time? Another one, too, that has really stuck with me has been just about overcoming adversity. In basketball, it's a game of runs. You're going to have highs and lows. You're going to go on runs. You're going to be up on a team. Next thing you know, they're coming in. You're not making shots. Your defense, we're not communicating well, whatever the case may be, and you're essentially in chaos. Just learning how to overcome that, how to get back to that center ground as a team, to recollect our thoughts and to get back to playing our best basketball. So just in life, too, just learning how to deal with adversity and what life throws at you and how to overcome that and to keep pushing forward. There's just so many valuable lessons that sports, basketball can teach young kids. I always encourage that. So if you have any kids or if you know young kids who are playing sports who struggle with it at times, don't let them quit because it's going to pay off in the long run. It's going to teach them life skills that they will carry for the rest of their lives.
Shireen, do you want to add to that?
Sure, let's be real. When I say played with the University of Toronto, I played left bench. So I'm not going to profess to be like this. But my point is I've been playing since I was 5. Also maybe because my parents didn't know what to do with me. So they're like, and it connected with me. Sport helped me find who I was, and I'm still finding that. And talk about failure, I'm a forward. If my shot's inaccurate, that's considered a failure. Nobody wants to see my shooting statistics. But the point is that you keep going. Now, one of the things in terms of coaching when I worked with younger girls, and I bless you both for working with young boys because I just cannot, with girls too, in particular girls of racialized and marginalized communities, confidence was the number one thing. It wasn't their athletic skill, it wasn't their technical ability, it was literally confidence. I start, my circle we do the jog, we were stretching, and I'll say, okay, I need every one of you to tell me what you're great at and what you need to improve. Do you know how difficult it was for these 13-year-olds to tell me what they were good at? To the point that I got frustrated. I was like, coach needs a minute, because they could not tell me what they were good at. Society has made our girls believe that they're not athletes, that they're not good at something. Now, this is also, that middle school age, and they're struggling with a lot of things. I had done some work with a grassroots soccer organization in Toronto, and I was working with girls that were 6, and they were ready to tell me everything about how great they were. But at some point, society told them after that they weren't good enough. And that was so hard for me because I am extremely lucky. I had a mom who told me I was smart and I was beautiful every single day. And guess what happened? I started to believe her. That's actually what happened. And I was like, when I had a kid, I was like, my daughter, I have 3 boys and a soccer player. This is how I explain them. And I told my daughter, I'm going to try the social experiment on you. I'm going to tell you that you're amazing. Now, sometimes it's rough because she's, a little bit of attitude there. But I remember saying to her, you have amazing calves. And she was 6, and she went to school and told her teacher that she had amazing calves. She still tells people she has amazing, but my point is, we need to work with our girls, yes, and boys, but really, society forces them to think that they're not good enough. This is on us. That confidence piece, the skill we can teach them when they have the drive. But if they don't even think they can get there, what are we supposed to do with that?
Did you want to add something, Jen?
Again, I mean, I think everybody in here has become the women that we are because of our sports journey. And I tell people all the time, I'm not married to a man, I've been married to football, right? I literally bought into the ring, for richer, for poorer, through sickness and in health, and
Traveling.
most definitely, at times, only death could have pulled us apart, right? It guided my life and the overcoming and the family. I think that's one of the thing that I'll add is, like, I have the most wonderfully beautiful, diverse football family. It's international. It's women and men who I have played with, played against, coached with, and coached against. And we are every make, model, shape, size, creed, color, religion, background, from everywhere, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, and we learned to be great together through this love of this game. And football fundamentally doesn't work if it's not diverse. When you look out on the field, you can see it requires everything from straight muscle to straight hustle and a whole lot of crazy. Clearly, I was the crazy. But we learned that what makes you different makes you special, right? Like in football, and that's what we have to do as coaches, is find what the unique value of that person is and then put you in a position where those strengths are maximized and where other people on the team have your back so that your weaknesses are not exploited. And we all say that we bleed the same color and we play the same way, and sometimes success is being a lead blocker and being anonymous so that your teammate can go and score. And that you would lay out for them and take on somebody 3 times your size so that someone else can score, and it's not all about you. And football gave me that, and it still does, right? And it's one of those things where when you're good, we want you, right? When you can contribute, I want you on my field. I don't care if you're purple. If you can do this job, this is what we want, right? And it's just very special in that. And I think for anybody coming out, it's realizing then in football and in life, what makes you different makes you special, right? Don't try and play somebody else's game. Hi, guess what? 5'2". I'm not going toe-to-toe with her. I'm at like her belly button. Real talk. I am not going to beat her up high, but I will win on the game of leverage. Right? And when you really tap into the essence of what makes you great as an athlete and you use that in the way that you play your game, then with a whole bunch of people working together, there's nothing that you can't do. So,
what I love about our conversation is we get it. And sometimes when you're in interviews or maybe you're going to see a stakeholder to talk to them about partnering, they don't get it. So how have you dealt with that? Sometimes people like challenges, sometimes it's frustrating. So how have you navigated that space? And I'll ask Shireen that question.
I mean, like working against someone that might not get anything. Oh,
they
I'm
don't
in
get
sports
that, okay.
journalism. A lot of them don't get anything at all. With all due respect to colleagues. I think that concepts that are basically, we'll throw around words, we'll understand we're talking about diversity, we'll understand we're talking about intersectionality. This is why I love working with women so much, was because a lot of those things you don't have to. It takes a lot of energy and the labor that people don't talk about. One of the things about women's sports that I've covered for so long is they're not just athletes. They're not just coaches. They're also advocating for so many other things. Whether it's health, whether it's mental health, whether it's just equality, equal pay. We can't just exist in one silo. We are part of so many different things. I'm not just a sports writer. I'm a sports activist. I actually use my biases, which are true biases, and I use them as tools to help convey the message that I want to tell and the stories that I want to share, the stories that I've been trusted with. So sometimes, you know, when you're sitting across people and you're trying to explain something and you use, you know, shorter sentences and maybe words that are a little, you know, easier for people to understand, it can get very, very frustrating. Like I remember almost, I was speaking to somebody and I felt like I had to clap between each words just to sort of emphasize, which I do on Twitter very often. But it's just, I think there's so much that we see and we read and we take in from where we are in our sitting points and our lenses. But I mean, truth be told, it's a whole lot of self-care that happens as well. I mean, that's a conversation I would love to have too, about what do you do when you do all that extra work.
Yeah, it's a lot of energy that you're...
So much energy, and you're just like, I'm so tired. Personally, I just watch Bend It Like Beckham, and I eat a lot of popcorn. And those of you that know me know that about me. That is my go-to. I literally carried it in a DVD in my backpack. And I was like, I need to unplug. But as a sports journalist, I can't always unplug. I need to be on Twitter all the time. So I have to compartmentalize the Islamophobic, the racialized, the misogynistic abuse, and be on Twitter. Because that's where I get the majority of my news. And that's how I've created allyships and friendships and relationships. But yeah, a whole lot of self-care and just a lot of patience. Like, wow.
I'm going with humor. But sometimes the smile and nod is really powerful. I also have a go-to phrase that works, and you'll probably want to use this one, definitely, Coach.
Noting.
Okay? They say something, and you just look at them and you're like, you do realize you said that out loud, right? Because you're subtly, you know, putting a line in the sand that wasn't okay, but then you can actually use that to build a bridge. It's like, because a lot of the times I like to give people the benefit of the one time that you weren't saying it to be malicious. It was just a bad combination of words. And because, you know, we've all done it, right? We've all said something that we wished we could immediately have it back. But now you kind of gave them that opportunity, right? Because they're like, oh, that's not what I meant. Like, I know. Of course you didn't mean that. I'm just coaching you up real quick to let you know that that combination of words should never, ever, ever be put together in that way ever again. Especially not outside the circle of trust that we're in right here. Because, you know, if we hope, which I usually do, that though it came out all wrong here, there might have been something bouncing around up there that was at one time a reasonable thought. It just went horribly wrong on its way out, right? And so that's with the people that you deal with on a regular basis. Now, there are also the trolls. And we can all nod with the trolls. But I have found that humor can actually be very powerful in that as well. And I learned that when I was playing on the men's team. And particularly even in dealing with some of the media, right? Like, so they had very kind things to say of what was gonna happen as a female playing in men's pro football. But my favorite was one that, you know, normally I try to not look, but you just can't help it sometimes. It's like it seeps through. And my favorite was, she's gonna get hit and die and or get pregnant.
Oh.
That's a really good combination. So then when having to do all the interviews, and you know everybody's looking for sauce, right? Like especially the guy interviewers, they'd be like, so, you know, have you dealt with any criticism? And I would just jump out in front of it. I'd be like, hey, so I gotta tell you this great story, right? This is an absolutely amazing insult. And I mean, I was one of the best female players in the world. And I just gotta tell you, I did not know it was possible to hit someone so hard that you could cause immaculate conception and death. They really have nowhere to go after that. It's kind of like you drop the mic and then they'll ask you real questions. So laugh often.
And Brittni, you know, you work in an environment, obviously, with the Raptors. That organization is, you know, walking the walk, talking the talk when it comes to gender diversity, and obviously, you know, beefing up their staff, their front office with women, talented women, you know, bringing them on for their skill sets. You know, what has that environment done for you in terms of shaping, you know, your path so far with the organization?
I feel so fortunate that I get to be alongside powerful women in leadership positions in any organization or any part of our organization. You can look and you see a female in the training room, on the court, doing PR, in the front office. I mean, everywhere. They're everywhere, and it's awesome. And I feel incredibly fortunate. And I learn from them every day, right? We all face our own different type of barriers, and we all can relate to one another. We all have each other's back. It's awesome. But one thing to add on the previous point, I think, how do we kind of get people to get it and get used to it? And the answer that I have is just keep showing up. People tend to fight back on or fear what they don't really understand, and I think a lot of maybe the backlash we get or the pushback we get is just coming from a place of misunderstanding, not from a place of malice or them wanting us to fail necessarily. So I think just continuing to show up, continuing to do your job, and making your name pop up in the email chain every day, you're the first one out on the court every day, whatever that looks like. The more you normalize the fact that you're there and you're there to work and you're there to help, it's gonna be a gradual process. It's not gonna happen overnight, but like the more the mindset is gonna change. And the other thing is just like, I used to get really, and I'm still working on it, but if somebody asked me what I did, I would get very like, I work for the Raptors, and they'd be like, oh, like ticket sales, or like they would just, which is nothing wrong with that, seriously, but I just didn't really know how to respond, and I almost gave in to the fact that like, oh, yeah, it is kind of weird that I'm, in the front office or I'm coaching or whatever it was I was doing at the time, but really practicing, yeah, I'm a coach, and then seeing how they react to that, and then building off, and just really having confidence and conviction in like what you do, because I think like you mentioned, we never give ourselves credit for things that we've actually done, and so practicing that and making it normal that we are confident and we do belong where we are and we feel that we should be there. That's been just another little thing when dealing with those types of interactions.
Kayla, do you want to add to that?
I would just say educating those who are misinformed, and then also calling out people sometimes when they're being ignorant, because sometimes you just need to call them out and be like, okay, that was ridiculous, or why do you think that? And when they don't have a basis for why they think, or why they said what they said, or why they think what they think, you can start having like dialogue with them, like, okay, so now let me educate you and explain why this is wrong, or help you understand why this should be. So.
We know the issue of pay equity, is in the news, but also, we all know women and maybe ourselves who are dealing with, being paid less than our male colleague. But, what really stood out to me this week was, I know there was the CBA announcement, but there was also a baseball player who got $27 million for a one-year contract. I think it was Mookie Betts. And, when I see things like that, and I'm thinking about women who I've had on my panel, some who had said, well, I coach, but I only make $40,000, or I have to take another job. Like, the gap, there's such a disparity, and it's 2020, and you just get so frustrated by it. So what more do you think leagues need to do, or corporations who are invested in sports and athletics, what more do they need to do to really just narrow that gap? Because it's still so far, they're at opposite ends.
I think a big part of it is if you truly believe in women's sports in general, put your money where your mouth is. Like, invest in women's sports, because that's a big part of it right there. I think that's the first and foremost. Invest in it. Like, invest in us, believe in us, market us. Like, you gotta be behind us, like, full and like completely.
Jen, what's holding some of these corporates or teams back from investing? We know what the answer is, but there's that barrier still because they're.
I think women just need to start buying the teams.
I'll do a slow clap for that one.
And I say that really, I give credit to one of my best friends, and she's like my gal pal. She's not in sports, right? Her name's Ingrid Vanderveld, and she was the first entrepreneur in residence at Dell, right? Like super, and she's redheaded, and she was watching me in the football space, and she was like, okay, so everybody just wants you to go back and coach. Why aren't you thinking of buying a team? And I'm like, okay, I came from playing for $1 a game. Like, women, like, are you nuts? And she was like, it's completely viable. You know that, right? She was like, it's about getting the right people together and the right dollars and the right resources. And So I think the people making the investment decisions have to have a vested interest in women's sports. And if you don't think that you do, I would push back, because you all have a mom. Like, I don't care who you are on this planet, you were birthed by a woman, okay? So you have a connection to women, which means you need to have a connection to women in sports, because there is no other argument than it is good for humanity. And when women are happy, guess what, guys? You're gonna be happy too.
Shireen, do you want to add to that?
One of the greatest disappointments in this country is when the CWHL shut down last April. I will forever be heartbroken. I think that the Canadian Women's Hockey League, it boasted some of the greatest athletes in the world, definitely the greatest hockey players in the world. I mean, in so much that after the U.S. women's national team won gold in Sochi, yeah, I said it out loud, I just am working through it still. Hilary Knight came and played for Le Canadien in Montreal. She came to this league. Now, people don't know that these women, our pride and joy, women who have given us the gold in 2010, 2014, they were not paid to play professionally. So think about, just for a second, think about your favorite hockey team if you watch hockey. Think about what your players would look like if they had to work full-time jobs, practice twice in the weekdays, and play back-to-back games on the weekend. And the women were still doing this. Like, the interest will build, it will come. The WNBA didn't make money overnight. It didn't. Women's soccer didn't become the most watched thing overnight. Still to this day, the most watched game in the United States of America of soccer was the women's final at the Women's World Cup. And the stats are still coming out about this. And this is all over the world. The most watched anything in the Netherlands was the final in the 2019 Women's World Cup. Interest in women's sport is there. We've let a whole country down. We're supposed to be a country that produces this. Hockey is one of the most played games by girls in this country. But guess what? There's no professional league anymore. This is a travesty. Invest in it. Even if you don't love hockey, I don't care. Invest in it. It's a smart option. The women hustle like you would not believe. Like, I'm a single mom of 4 kids, and I'm stressed out by their schedules. Like, it's unbelievable. And believe in it, because it will give you, it won't just give you a financial result. It'll change society. It'll change the way athletes think of themselves. It'll change the face of the sport. Like, and we're talking all the way down. I want to see a women's soccer league in Canada. We're the only team in the top 10 FIFA rankings that doesn't have a professional league in our own country. Like, I'm sorry, that's embarrassing. So that's not good enough. Why don't we have it? Why don't we have opportunities? Where is your money? Yes, you people, where is your money? No.
It's like Kickstarter campaign,
yeah, Kickstarter right now.
Get on your phone.
So yeah, invest in it. Like, you will not be disappointed, because women don't get into women's sports for the money. And that's just not a media tip. They do it because they love it. And one of the things everyone's been talking about, and Jen has been saying constantly, is the ripple effect. It's for the next generation. So you talk to the best athletes in this country, they talk about future generations. Talk about to the women hockey players in Canada. They'll talk about the girls. They'll meet for hours signing autographs. Okay, maybe I was one of those people that wanted autographs, but that's fine. But the point is, they will do this. You go to national games at BMO. The girls will come out and they'll sign for you. Like, they'll sign autographs, they'll talk to you. Like, it's so special. We have like treasure troves of athletes. Why are we not investing in them again? Please tell me.
And, you know, obviously it's a great discussion. I know a lot of people are trying to put their heads, down to figure it out. How do you feel about those who say, well, maybe there just needs to be alternative streams of revenue? We shouldn't be focusing on one specific company or one, sports league to fund it. Is there power in creating this alternative funding, non-traditional funding? You talked about your friend who's an entrepreneur, who's probably an investor of some sort, tapping into women or men and people like that who maybe don't have the strongest sports connection, but they believe in what you're doing.
I mean, the Thai national women's team is owned by an entrepreneur in Thailand. They went to the Women's World Cup. Do it. I'm all about non-traditional. Our podcast survives off of Patreon. So we are in a time and a place where alternative ideas for money and getting that cash money is important. Like, yo, PayPal me, I'm fine with that. Like, I'm an independent sports writer. Like, yes, and the way that people do things. I mean, the PWPHA, the Dream Gap Tour, they're selling T-shirts. Like, buy a T-shirt. Like, they're trying everywhere. Like, they're not far off from having bake sales. You know, like, I think I just also must mention when I say bake sales, sorry for the digression, those cupcakes were amazing. So,
get your cupcakes.
Get your cupcakes. So support them, because the way in the like unbelievable creativity, industriousness of women to do things with such little money is just incredible.
Sorry, She's4Sports is an example.
Yeah, I mean, well, look what you've done. This is a thing to behold. You give like somebody $1 and look what they'll do with it. Like, it's just phenomenal.
But for those who are just thinking, maybe I want to coach, but I'm not sure, and something's holding them back, you know, sort of what do you want to share with them to just kind of empower and inspire them to just do it, whether it's mentoring or coaching or getting really involved in sports at that level where they can influence a young girl? Anybody?
Come on, coach. Just stop looking for everybody else, coach.
I kind of already touched on this, but don't limit yourself, and don't think that you had to have played at a high level or you had to have done X, Y, and Z in order to be a coach. I took a very, very unconventional route to being a coach. There's so many different routes you can take. And yeah,
can you talk a little bit about
sure
the role that you're playing with the Raptors? You know, using your background was data analytics.
Yeah. So I grew up in the States. I grew up in Iowa and played basketball since I was about 5 years old. Went on to play collegiately at the University of Northern Iowa, which is a Division I school in Iowa, and I had aspirations of playing professionally. Unfortunately, sustained 4 knee surgeries. So as I was, you know, I went to college to play basketball. I didn't go to get an education. I happened to get one while I was there. I was studying statistics and actuarial science, which, raise your hand if you've heard of actuarial science.
Oh, look at that.
3
Smart
of you,
crowd.
great. I was studying that not because I really had a ton of interest in it per se. Math came really natural to me, and it was something I felt like I was going to be missing a lot of class because of basketball, and it's, you know, I wouldn't have to like catch up so much studying, and it would work out. It ended up being really difficult, but after my playing days were over, I had to really reevaluate what I wanted to do with my life, because I thought I was going to play professionally. I didn't think past that, and so this whole like sports analytics revolution was just kind of starting as I was graduating college. And I started off just working for a call center, being a data analyst, analyzing call center data. It was very exciting. But I found myself in my spare time, you know, taking those tools that I had at work, whether it was statistics software or whether it was a new programming language that I'd learned, getting really nerdy here, and using that knowledge to analyze sports data. I would think of projects and be like, I wonder if, you know, teams would actually do something like this or find interest in this, or maybe media outlets or whoever, using this immense amount of data to create interesting stories or use that information to make better decisions, whatever the case may be. So I started just Googling one day sports analytics and just seeing what popped up, and it turned out, especially in baseball, it was this huge, huge movement, and there's a lot of jobs being posted. Just for basic data analysts to come in and be like, look, we have all these technologies and these tools that we're gathering data. And for baseball, it was like pitch types and speed and velocities and all that type of stuff. And we want somebody to come and analyze it and tell us what it means and help us make better decisions, whether that's drafting players or whether that's strategy decisions in game. And so I started off trying to apply for like every baseball team in the MLB, didn't hear back. But I kept trying, I kept applying, and eventually I found this company in Chicago called Stats, and they were the global provider for data and sports technology. They were the leading provider in the world. And it just so happened that the product that they needed an analyst for was their basketball product. It was, they called it SportView at the time. Not to get too detailed here, but basically these cameras were installed in every NBA arena, and they tracked all the players and the ball and got all this really, really detailed data about what was going on in the game, and they needed somebody to come in and do a little QA and make sure everything was tracking correctly, but also interpret the data, build reports for their clients, which were NBA teams, and communicate, kind of be that buffer between this really analytical perspective and like actually speaking it in basketball terms. So it was actually a very perfect job for me. I spent 2 years there just being a data analyst, making connections throughout the NBA, as a lot of NBA front office personnel were my clients. So I never thought that this would lead to coaching, but one thing led to another. I made a connection with the Raptors. They were hiring for a specific position on their front office analyst team. So I got connected with the right people. I was really fortunate to be in the right place at the right time. And the more I kind of spent time in the front office as a data analyst, I got to kind of touch a lot of different parts of the organization, which I felt really unique in doing so. I got to help the GM make decisions when it came to evaluating draft prospects. Hey, we're looking at this guy and this guy. Can you tell me, based on the data we have, like, can you compare him to other guys? What's a player comparison? It's types of questions like that. Or how much money do you think we should pay this guy based on similar players like him? And questions like that. But then there was also questions from the coaching staff that I would get. How can we prepare for this opponent? What are their tendencies? What type of behaviors do they do the most? This specific player, we're working on this with him. Can you tell me how he's been in this area, this area, this area? Answers that you really can only get by looking at immense amounts of data and knowing how to interpret it. And so I was kind of I felt like I was bilingual in a sense. I could read the data and I could also speak basketball, and it made sense to a coaching staff who's never seen a line of code in their life. And the more I kind of did those things, I felt myself gravitating more towards the coaching questions I would get. I found myself really interested in game strategy and player development and all those types of things. And so that kind of, sparked my interest there. And luckily, I have great support in my organization. And they kind of pushed me that way, too. They challenged me, like, hey, there's kind of two directions you can go here. You can stay in the front office, work to be a GM. You can move to the coaching side and kind of experiment there. And so I was encouraged to do that, and I'm really thankful. And like I said, there's no A to B, path to get to be a coach. There's so many different routes, and for me, it was really unconventional, but I'm just really happy with how it went, and now I provide a very new perspective on the coaching staff that not a lot of other coaches can say. They've analyzed immense amounts of basketball data for the past 5 years, but I find it to be it's unique, but it's something I bring to the table.
What I like a lot about the things that you guys are doing, on the court, off the court, in your profession, but also looking for other ways to create resources and spaces for young girls. And Shireen, I just want to talk to you about, how are you giving a voice to those who are voiceless, who don't have the power to say, advocate on their behalf, or, you might meet with a stakeholder and say, okay, these girls need spaces, they need resources for this. So how are you doing that for those who, they don't have the voice right now, but they probably will in the future?
Yeah, I like the way you said that. I don't ever believe that anyone's voiceless. Arundhati Roy is a writer, and she wrote that people aren't voiceless, they're deliberately silenced or preferably unheard. And I've always taken that and carried that with me. I feel very fortunate to tell the stories of people who've trusted me. I mean, I've covered some really difficult stories in my time, and the way that you make space for others, because part of what you do existing, and particularly what I do, I can speak to my experience only, is by creating spaces, by seeing me do what I do. That gives people ideas, young girls ideas particularly, that, oh, she can do it. I remember I've started mentoring a young journalist, and she's in BC. She's a Sikh woman, and she's fantastic. She's like, I was, totally floored to see you, because you made some joke in Punjabi or something, or in Urdu rather, and she's like, I couldn't believe that I was hearing that, and I was like, that's great. Like, just being in spaces where you don't expect to be seen, and that's like the majority of my professional life. Is that I go places and they think sometimes I'm staff. Like it's unbelievable, and that's exactly how it works. You say, no, I'm this person, and if I was a coach of the Raptors, I'd wear a sign. So I don't know, like, you're not wearing a sign. Like, she's like, I just heard her tell somebody, oh yeah, I work at the Raptors. I'm like, oh my God, you're an assistant coach. Like, anyways, I can fangirl later. But so, and like, Kayla, your role is pretty well self-explanatory sometimes. But like, seriously, I think we have a tendency to own it. And I'm getting better at this as I get older. Age definitely helps. I struggled very severely with imposter syndrome. I'm still sitting on this panel going, what am I doing here? But I think that creating those spaces and having other people look at us and share that. I mentor young journalists of color all the time. Create those spaces, and young women who are budding sports journalists. I can't tell you how many come up to me and say they want to be in this field, but there's no place for them. No. Someone made you think.
Yeah, that's true.
Someone made you think that. There is always enough space. If there's enough hockey writers in one outlet to cover every single NFL team or hockey team, but not one full-time beat writer to cover the WNBA, I'm sorry, there's a problem with that. And to call it out. I mean, to mention it, to say, listen, we have to start having these conversations. And sometime we were talking about people in higher decision-making being bold. Sometimes it didn't occur to them. So pitch those ideas. Be bold and email people that if you're in journalism or you're in media, creative media, take your chance. You're gonna miss, and this is a statistical sports thing, you're gonna miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And I failed stats, by the way. So, yeah, you didn't hear that. So the thing is that you keep doing what you're doing, I'll fail. I fail spectacularly sometimes. And then you unlearn and you keep going.
Does anyone want to add to that? No?
To your earlier question, we were asking about whether women feel comfortable, like, do I have the right or am I capable of coaching? The one thing that I would share to answer that I always share with the kids I work with, is to just step outside your comfort zone and don't be afraid to try something new, something that scares you, because that's where the growth happens and that's where the magic happens, and everything that you want is always outside that comfort zone. And then also realizing too that while you're outside that comfort zone and you're chasing after that possibility or that dream, there's going to be people along the way who can help you too. Like if you look around you, half the time you don't even realize how many resources you have that can help you get to where you want to be. So not being afraid to ask for help in those situations, leaning on those who are maybe in positions that you want to be in, like reaching out to them, asking them for help or guidance and support, but just not being afraid to step out and try something new, because if we stay in our comfort zone, in our comfort box, like we'll never achieve anything, we won't get to that next level, and we won't see what could be.
One thing, I'm glad you have the mic. I remember when I was speaking to you, outside of playing basketball, going to the WNBA, you told me that you also wanted to be a teacher. Mm-hmm. So I know you also co-authored this book, The Magic of Baseball. Can you talk The Magic of Basketball. You could tell I need a coffee now. I know, Shireen, you like coffee. I need a coffee now. The Magic of Basketball, why did you decide to publish this book, and sort of what was the process like?
Okay, so with me, those who know me know that I just love pouring into kids. I think I was pretty blessed and fortunate growing up. I had loving parents, I had a great support system, incredible coaches, mentors who were always pouring into me, just helping me to just get to where I am today, and I don't think I'd be where I am without their love and support. So along with that, I went to school for education. I love working with kids. I love to teach, and I also love art. And on the other side of that too, basketball has been incredible. Just like we mentioned, all the different life skills basketball can teach you throughout your, that you take with you throughout your life. I want to find a way that I can combine all those things and share those stories and share all this with young kids and just pour into them. And I get the opportunity to do that when I go to camps, when I speak at schools, and I love it because I'm able to do what people did for me. But for those kids that I can't necessarily reach right now, I wanted to create something that could reach them, and I decided to write this children's book with my sister, she is much more gifted when it comes to putting words together. She's very elegant, very well-spoken. She writes really well, so I kind of forced her to help me. But she was okay with that.
You owe me. No.
She was happy to help out. And in the book, it basically outlines my journey with the game of basketball, because I would love to say I went from here to here and everything was all sunshine and rainbows, but it wasn't. I had a lot of trials that I overcame, and through basketball, in my journey, I talk about simple things like the gift of friendship that I gained, and then also learning about hard work, self-confidence, teamwork, just all the different things basketball taught me and all the life skills it gave me along the way, and all the gifts as well, like being able to travel, being able to see the world, a free education, the ability to play as a career. So I just wanted to share that with young kids. And then also in the book, because I think it's important, I have 2 pages. One is for all their dreams, to write down your dreams, because I think it's important to write down your dreams. If you don't write it down, we're humans, we tend to forget things. So sometimes you just need to write it down to remind yourself and to put on your wall. And then on the other side, I have a goals page. So I'm like, okay, those dreams that you have, how do you turn those into a reality so that they don't stay dreams, but they become actual like you become that person. And it just teaches them to like write down little steps that they can take starting today to accomplish those dreams. So I just wanted to inspire, encourage, and motivate kids and pour back into them the way others have poured into me. And that's why I created the book. Very passionate about it.
This panel is just, career goals, life goals. I'd love to sit here and talk to you guys forever. We're out of time for my portion, but we want to provide an opportunity for you guys to ask questions. Before I get to your questions, just to sort of end our discussion, I'll just ask you all very quickly. The landscape of women's sports is changing. Where would you like to see it go next, or what would you like to see that landscape look like?
I just quickly, can I see the front cover of that? I think it's so cool that there's a little girl holding a basketball in a children's book. Like, I never had that as a kid. All my favorite players that I idolized growing up were men. I never had exposure to professional female athletes. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But I think where I want to see it going is I want to see young boys picking up a book like that. I want to see young boys wearing Elena Deladon jerseys. I want to see, along with young girls, and I think we're getting there. But that's kind of where I want to see it. It's not about gender, it's about a passion that we have that we share.
I love that. People talked about this silent revolution that's happening in different, various sports. I think that if you think you're doing enough to support, change in sport through the world, you can always do more. What are you doing? Use your privilege, or use your power to do it. I've been really lucky. Like you mentioned, I've been extremely blessed to be able to be mentored by people with that privilege and power. And I recognize that. To be able to tell stories, to be able to have that trust, and also diversify. I'm always going to say this, diversify where you're getting your media from. I will absolutely say that. You can consider that a plug, absolutely, for Burn It All Down. But I'm also saying where you're getting your stories, the athletes themselves, listen to them, what they're doing. They're helping change society in so many beautiful ways. I'm really excited about it. I think that sports, and I've said this earlier in the panel, is one area that's starting really important conversations that we really need to have. You can either be part of that and build your chair and bring it to the table, or you can just sit back.
Before you hand the mic over, just tell us a little bit quickly about what you're doing with Hijabi Ballers. I didn't get that in, and I wanted to get that in.
Thank you. I'm on the advisory board of an organization that, when it first came to me, was very small. It was like a vision of a couple of girls, young Muslim women, that said, we would love you to be on our board. I was like, yeah, what's this going to be, once a month? Well, no. They actually turned into a phenomenon, and my work is very global as well as, Canada, but not local, which is desperately, and we're in an incredible city to be able to do this. So much. Hijabi Ballers has gone from changing the face of what an athlete can look like here, and with the help of MLSE and Nike in a partnership, they inspired the front office at Raptors to literally be the first professional sports team to offer a sports hijab with their logo on it. So I saw this and I cried. I saw the media release and I was like, you talk about not seeing that on a book. There's so many young girls in the world that don't see themselves represented still. This was a huge thing that happened in Toronto because of MLSE, because of the Hijabi Ballers, and because of Nike and doing that partnership. We can criticize corporations all we want at the same time. I know there's a lot of struggle with that. But the reality of how it's impacted girls who see themselves on the court now, and Hijabi Ballers, they dabble in ball hockey now. They're creating spaces for swimming. They sponsor a softball league. I played, I was terrible, but it was a lot of fun. They're putting girls and women in spaces, and not just young girls, women. They've started running clubs. They just did the Toronto Marathon a couple months ago. Yeah, these women run voluntarily too. It's amazing. And we're very lucky to be there and to witness this, because it's changing sport and society in real time.
John, I'll give you the last word. Where would you like to see women's sports go? How would you like to see the landscape shift?
I want to see it be a sports conversation, right? I don't like it when it's necessarily just compartmentalized to say, well, this is the women's version or this. You're a baller. It's not you're a WNBA player. You're a baller flat out, right? And to do that, we have to normalize it. We have to have people who fall in love with you as a baller and as a human. and that they get to see your story and want to be invested, right? Like, I mean, I talked to Brittni earlier. I'm like, man, I need to figure out when you guys are, you know, in a city that I'm in because I want to come support you. Basketball was not my first sport. Go figure. I sized out at like 8 years old. Okay, so it's not my go-to sport, but I will go to that sport because I love people involved. And that's something that I've committed to, and that's something I know that we've noticed. So I'm part of an organization called She Is, which is a collective of women in sport who have committed to amplify each other, right? Like, and it's, hey, I'm in football, but you know what? I'm gonna go to hockey and I'm going to connect with these women because one of the things we noticed is that women don't cross-pollinate sports and support of other women's sports to the extent that the guys do, right? You'll see all the time an NBA player who is very visible at an NFL game and vice versa. And, you know, there's a lot of points of interconnectivity that the women haven't experienced. And I think a lot of that is because, you know, we've had our heads down and we're just doing work. And the truth is that, like, the power of one woman in football is not nearly as great as the power of women in football. And yet then you say it's not even nearly as powerful as women in sport and women in society, right? So we have to start connecting, but we also have to minimize the points where we're dissecting and just cutting out sections and saying, oh, you know, that's good for a girl, or that's a women's sport versus a sport. Like, I want to support the growth of sports and the equality and the opportunity that it provides, whether it's, you know, seeing a woman coach men or seeing women at the top of their game and really honestly being the technically sound players that they are. I think that was actually, you know, we talk about coaching and how you got there. At 5'2", I couldn't outbig anybody unless they're like 8. So my techniques and fundamentals had to be very spot on. So even when I went to the NFL, they'd be like, man, Coach Jen's a beast about fundamentals. Well, duh. That's what I had. But if I can take what's in this little body and put it in you, hello, we have a winning combination, right? So we need to find these places where we're taking best practices in sport and realizing that the cross-pollination is where the beauty is, right? Like, that it's not just in one sector of women's versus men or football versus basketball, but that as a collective, we have collective power.
We all have the power, right, in this room, and I am so thankful for you guys.
And you better have followed everybody on this panel, and you better have at least tapped friends to do it too, and look at the people they're connected to, right? Because then you'll find somebody that you didn't know was there. Right? You might know about me, but like, look at the people that I'm engaging with, because those are probably also phenomenal people. I know that was one of the first things I did with the panel, was like, oh, this is cool. Oh, she's cool. Oh, what's she doing? Oh, she got a book. Hey, I was working on look, I'm writing a football one, right? Like, and I look at the characterization as being placed, but that's where the synergy and the magic happens. And that's where real, like, momentum, I say, it's a tipping point where we have an opportunity for exponential growth, right? And big parts of that are going on right now.
She said it well. Thank you so much, guys, for your stories, your experiences, your comments. Oh, wow. Someone pass the mic to Despina. Despina is going to be facilitating our Q&A portion. Oh, okay.
Thank you, ladies. That was amazing and inspiring and really important conversation. I don't exactly know how to ask this question, but maybe one of you can run with it. So I'm in the boxing world, and I'm a professional ring announcer. And as far as I know, I'm the only woman in North America active. So I'm in a place where I'm trying to anchor that and educate people in my sport about that, and not trying to be too, how do I say this? Okay, where does feminism fit into this? Because I'm not sure how I feel about feminism, and what does feminism mean to you today? So I don't want to turn people off at this really critical point in my career, as far as I've come, where I've come, and all the people making decisions at this point are men. So I don't want to be doing that whole stuff it in your face, rah, 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 I'm woman, hear me roar, I'm the best, I'm amazing, you suck. So I'm trying to find the right language, and it's been working, and the men respect what I'm doing, and like one of you said, actually, how men have given you all the opportunity that you have up to a certain point, and I appreciate them for that. So it's a very respectful relationship. However, the culture in general, I'm wondering how far I push the feminism part, not being a feminist myself.
Well, I think there's a couple of parts to that, and one place I would jump in is like, and I'm gonna steal a bit from the analytics. And I'm going to say that I guarantee you there's a business case for the viewership to having women's voices, right? And that's one part of it, right? You can tell them it's important and that women would love it, but if you give them the numbers, and then, like, a lot of the times, again, you don't know what you don't know. But what do you do when you do know? Okay, so look for the business case, and then have really good ways that these men who have mentored you can be proactive. Because what I've found, and all of my biggest breaks came from men, I mean, there were no women, so it always had to be men, right? A lot of the times they didn't even know that it was foreign, right? Like, I mean, Wendell literally said, like, you are taking this and I'm taking it for you, because he saw somebody who was talented and it wasn't about gender, right? But the case to be really constructive in what you see and make it a tangible suggestion. Don't just say, we need women. Like, okay, so hey, I've been in this. Here's the viewership of women in boxing. Here is how this benefits the sport and benefits you. And here are some ways that we can use this as an example to have a conversation that, hey, maybe it gives you earned media. Maybe it does all of these things. But be intentional and be concrete. Don't necessarily just say, I need you to do more. Say, like, hey, this is the current status, and here are some ways that we can tangibly move the needle, and you've been so supportive up until this point. I would love your support in taking this to the next step.
That was a great question. Yeah. Do you want to jump on that? Yeah.
I would totally jump in on that. I'm not the rah, 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 you suck, but I'm definitely rah, rah, rah. 100%. I identify strongly as a feminist, but that's what feminism means to me. I can only speak to my experience. So everyone will define their own feminism. For mine, it's intersectional. It's taking into account ability, race, everything across the spectrum, but that's what's comfortable for me. So, I mean, in terms of boxing, I read a book by Dr. Linda Dahl, which was amazing, and she was the first woman medic in the world of boxing. I interviewed her for the podcast, and she really said, I had to put away the fact that I was a woman in order to do this. And, you know, she struggled with issues within the sport of people, you know, being accused and convicted of domestic violence, and how she grappled with that as a woman, as a mother of a daughter, and et cetera. So there's so many layers. The only thing I can say is, like, and I'm going to be very biased when I say this, if you put yourself in a position where you think feminism is the enemy, then you won't be able to benefit from the good things it can bring to your life and the solidarity. But you get to define what that is for you. It's not going to be the same for anyone else. But if you start to villainize something that doesn't even necessarily, I'm very familiar with people that get villainized for something they shouldn't be villainized with. So I get that. But again, you do you and what you're comfortable with. And just to touch on something also and reiterate what Jen said, men gave me an opportunity because they were the only ones in the power-seeking positions. So, you know, it's not like women didn't give me opportunities either. I've worked with incredible editors that are women, like people that have, you know, given me a shot that are women. But it just so happens that most of the people in sports media and decision-making positions, 95% in this country are men. That's why. So I think we should keep that in perspective when we talk about getting those opportunities, is because they're going to come from men because they hold the power.
Is there another question? That was a good one.
Hi, good evening. Stephanie Gayositz. I've worked in sport my entire career, and it's so wonderful to hear all of your stories. My question kind of dovetails on this. There's pretty much been acknowledged that there's what I'll call an opportunity gap when it comes to placing females in coaching roles and other higher level executive roles in sport. Because let's face it, people generally feel most comfortable hiring people like themselves. And I think that's a lot of how we've gotten to the point where we are currently. How do you feel about policies for leagues to ensure that teams are interviewing female applicants for coaching roles? Do you feel that those types of steps can help, or are there other alternatives that you think can work to help diversify particularly the coaching roles within sport?
Who wants to take that on?
I could start. I think it's an interesting start to say we need to make sure we interview this many women. I don't think it's the end all. I think it's a much deeper rooted issue than that. Yes, we need more women in application pools. We need more women. I think Jen hit on it earlier. I think young women don't realize they even have the opportunity to apply for something like that. I don't think they have the opportunity to become interested in something because they don't have exposure to it, or because somebody shut the door on them at a really young age. I think it starts in the house, to be honest. I think I was so fortunate. My parents, I was so interested in a lot of very quirky things. I loved reading NASA articles, I loved playing Nintendo games, and I loved playing sports. And they never shut that door on me, even at a very young age. They let me explore those things and run with whichever one stuck with me. They never said, that's not girly enough for you. They never said. So I, from a very young age, had the mindset of like, okay, I can do something like this. Nobody shut that door on me. So I think it starts there. Obviously, that's easier said than done, but I don't think it's as easy as saying, interview more women. I think we need to say, let more women become interested in these things. Find ways to get more women exposed to these things.
I'm going to go with like a blind date versus marriage philosophy. Okay? It's really hard to tell somebody you're going to get married to somebody that you've never met. A lot of this stuff happens in comfort situations, right? A lot of the guys that are hiring other guys, it's because they played together. Or, you know, so-and-so coach so-and-so, and it's really easy to like, hey, can you give me the skinny on this guy? Or, hey, you coached with him here, what's he like? And that network of connection and interconnectivity has yet to be developed in a lot of areas of sport. I think the WNBA having a relationship with the NBA and women having the opportunity to play at big-time college programs means they'll have more interconnectivity than, you know, someone like us where there is no women's college football and something like that. So, and I think that's why you've seen it move quicker in more recent years, right? I mean, Becky used to play at the same facility that Pop did. So there's a comfort there that you have, whereas in a lot of situations, how are you going to tell a staff that they should hire a woman? Because there's really a lot of variety within women, like, right? Like, it's not like you just throw the women card and all sizes are the same, right? And so if they don't even know any women who are in their sport, it's difficult. So what I always say is we don't want them to try and make a hire off a blind date, but what if we allowed them to date first, right? Like, there are a lot of coaching opportunities maybe to coach together and like overseas or at camps, and then you work together and you're like, oh, I really like the way this person, you know, connects. And then you also have a relationship that you could say, oh, hey, you know, this job's open, like, have you thought of applying? And you're like, no, like, I didn't even know that was possible. No, you'd be really good for this. Hey, do you want me to call my buddy and let him know that I've worked with you? Because that's what a lot of it was for me. I mean, I played with the guys. So when Wendell came in and he was a new coach, he saw how the guys responded to me, and then he grilled me on football, and he was like, you got to coach. Like, this is a no-brainer, right? And then going to the next level, there were several guys who, you know, also could say, I've worked with her and I've seen her in football, and like, these guys really respect her. You should check this person out. So I think to really move the hiring needle, we need to allow each other to date, right? Like come into situations where we become comfortable working together, and then the progression, it's like, well, why wouldn't I? Man, I coached with that person here and they were fantastic, and I would love to, like, you know, date more seriously, right? Like instead of just kind of the a woman card, right? Or why have you never hired a woman? Well, I don't know. I haven't met one that does it, right? Like it's a very hard thing if you've never had interactions.
Next question.
Hi, I guess I'll just stand up for a second. My name's Ayla Shforfar, and I just wanted to say thank you to Shreen, first of all, because I'm a part of the PWHPA, the Professional Women's Hockey Players Association. Yay. And so that's not why I said that, but I just wanted to thank you, first of all, for speaking about what our movement is here in front of everybody, because that helps us, you know, spread our awareness, and I felt really honored that you thought this was a great place to share that, because it really is, and I think that I just speak for all of us and say thank you for helping us share our story. And I guess my question is for Kayla, who obviously, I'm gonna sit down now, who obviously just went through everything with the WNBA and your new CBA, and that's something we're fighting for. We don't have a sustainable future to play in the league, and we're trying to do that. So I guess my first, maybe overall arching question is, how do you get that progress? You know, is it a core group of your players fighting for that? Is it a great relationship with the NBA? Obviously right now, women's hockey's in a very interesting state. We're not aligned with the NHL, and that can be a pathway for us, but that hasn't been decided upon. So I just want to know a little bit more experience on how you guys are paving the way, and thank you for doing that, because we look up to you as professional athletes in a different sport, because you really help inspire us to keep motivated on our pathway. So thank you.
Well, for the WNBA, I know it's all the players, so all of us are involved, but we do have like a select group, like we call it the WNBPA, our Players Association, and then through our players we have like our executive committee, so we have our president, Neko Gumike, and then for each team, so that everybody's represented and heard, we have player reps, and then they get together and talk about different issues, because it's kind of hard to get 144 players together all at one time to discuss issues, so it helps if you can get like at least 1 or 2 player reps from each team who come together, talk to our executive committee, and they discuss the issues that we bring up to our player reps. So if it's issues on maternity leave or travel, pay, whatever the case may be, we're able to get all of our issues up front. They take it to our executive committee, they discuss it, and then through the WNBPA, and then talking with the league as well to start creating the CBA agreement and the changes that we need so we can get to keeping our league sustainable and helping other leagues like you guys to be sustainable, and to just create it so that more leagues, more women's leagues have the opportunity to create sports that women can play and look forward to in the future. So I think it's a collective, like all of the players, everybody needs to be serious about it, because it's not just about like the top player. All of us are involved, from the star players to the players who warm the bench. So it affects all of us. So. Oh. I've been there too, so it's okay. I've been all over. So, but it's important for all the players to be serious about it, and then having an executive committee definitely helps as well.
Is there another question? Hi.
Hi. I just want to say thank you for what you guys spoke about today. It was really cool, and I'm excited to ask this question because I can't wait to brag to my friends that I asked the assistant coach of the Raptors a question. Yeah. I'm really excited about that. But I can't wait to do that. What our question is actually is, you guys touched upon overcoming obstacles, obviously, and challenges. You know, all of you guys are trailblazers in your own right, taking up spaces that are not obviously taken up by a lot of women. But I wanted to ask, touch upon a little bit of your experiences of backlash or criticism or resistance you may have received from other women when you try going about pursuing a career, pursuing like the higher levels of administration. Like, have you guys, like, what kind of resistance, if you guys have faced, how did that affect you? How did you overcome it? And is that a culture that is kind of diminishing, is no longer as prevalent, or is it still just as bad in your experiences?
Who wants to take that one on?
Just to clarify, are you asking about criticism from other women? Like in the industry or outside the industry, or?
Just if you said to someone, I can't wait to go to that job, I'm just like, really, you're going to go to that job?
Yeah.
It's
funny. I've never been asked that question, so that's a really good question. I can't think of a time where another woman has criticized my passion or my career path, which is very interesting to say in itself. I have a great support system of women with the Raptors, and I think we're the best in the league to do it. I'm biased, but no, we are. No, I mean, there's definitely been. I personally just choose to listen to those that are close to me and those that I trust. So any sort of backlash I get, I kind of just goes in one ear and out the other. But I don't know. It's not about them, right? It's about me. And I think we touched on it with like the whole gender pay gap and everything. And Serene touched on it. Like, women aren't getting into sport for any other reason besides they love it. There's no other reason. And so I think when people become understanding of that, the backlash kind of settles, right? Because it's like nothing you say or do can kind of knock me off this path that I'm on, because my passion is the one driving it. And nothing else really matters. But that's a good question. I'll have to think a little more on that. But I honestly can't think off the top of my head, unless you guys have a different experience. Like another.
I was going to add that our first panel, we had 4 different women in sports. This was in 2017. And a panelist did say that the backlash she got from a female was on social media. So it was more aligned with the trolls.
Yeah.
It wasn't anybody that she kind of met in person. But I love your advice that, as they say, ignore the haters, keep it moving, and, it's all about you. Like, it's all about what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
So I like that advice.
Hello, my name's Sabrina, and my question is kind of 2 parts. So I know many people talked about allies, and I've also heard the word sponsor as well, where someone actually, which you all mentioned too, someone goes to bat for you and says you should hire this person for the job. And I think my question to you is about pipeline as well, to get to these positions that you're in. All of you up there are right now the exception, not necessarily the norm. And so a lot of times too, people see you, and the media also takes up, okay, now we don't have to worry about sexism now. We have women coaching in professional teams. It's over. Anybody can get in. So I just wanted you to comment on that. And I just also have a question for Coach Jen when you talked about, your response to people getting to know you and, quotas for interviews. And recently there was quite a bit of press around the NFL and the racism around hiring as well, despite having coached and despite having the qualifications and being in the right circles and still not getting the job. And also within hockey, there was quite a bit of press on players who also had the stats, much better stats on paper, and did the right channels and knew a lot of the right coaches, and it was a black player too, and he didn't get selected as well. So I just want to know how do we reconcile that too with having the connections yet still not getting the job?
I'm going to go back to my earlier comment, and sometimes we just need different people to own the teams, right? And that is part of it, right? Like hiring decisions, that's something that happens at the top. And you can develop a pipeline and interview processes, which is important, but it's not making the end decision, right? Obviously, part of it is making sure that people get interviews. But who is making that final decision? That comes to an ownership question, right? That's why I said, well, maybe some of us need to get to the point where we're owning teams, right? Or the owners have this at the forefront of their mind too, right? Because it's hard to affect that part unless someone or something reaches them, right? So where is the belief in that the success is going to translate? Because at the end of the day, you can have ideas of what you want in certain capacities. In coaching, you have to put the results on the board, right? Flat out. And it hurts all of us to see and experience something that you look around and you say, that's not right, right? It hurts everybody looking in terms of diversity. I mean, I know the players, and I believe that the representation is important and the relationships are important, and that you being able to look at somebody who looks like you and to learn from, and to say that this is a path, and that I could have a path into the front office, or I could have a path into coaching, right? But pipelines are only one part. And it's very important, and it's very important to have interview practices. But what has to happen is, are those interviews really being considered, or are they checking off a box, right? And that is what I have heard from many minority coaches, is that, that sometimes that's the challenge, is you don't know if you're getting a real interview or a minority higher requirement interview. And sometimes those are very different things. And I think that, I would love to say, great, let's get into a position as women, for example, like that I know of, no woman has ever bought an NFL team. They have inherited them, and we have women owners in place. But think about what it would take and the differences you might make if you're owning that team, and what decisions that you can make. Because I know, frankly, I would have training programs within my building that it was like, you know what, I will make a decision to hire a female coach who I think has talent and put her in a position where we're going to mentor. I would look at making sure we have representation so that the players feel like their voices are heard and their future is looked towards, right? But that is a decision that's hard. I think that, yes, we can have conversations in the press that raise those issues and have those conversations because we have to, right? Because if it's done in the dark and nobody talks about it, nothing has to change. Right? Like that is the beauty of media, is sometimes making people who are in their comfort zone get uncomfortable because they won't just let it stay status quo. Right? That's where advocates come, that's where activists come into place, and it has to happen. Now, in terms of even some of that with pipeline, we have to have those things. Right? And one thing I will give a lot of credit to the NFL for is that they have made a conscious effort to develop a pipeline in coaching for women. Right? It is actually an initiative that they're working on. And they hired Sam Rappaport to lead that charge. And that was a woman I first met her in 2010 with the U.S. national team when she was at USA Football. So they are doing some of those conferences and places where you have coaches who would consider it. They come in and they network and they start to develop those relationships. So I think it is a very real issue, right? And it's one that definitely needs to be talked about, but it only changes when people make those voices be heard, and that the power structures shift to a point where it's also something that they're behind as well, right?
Is there another question?
Could I add something to that too?
Sorry,
real
go
quick?
ahead.
You said that up here we're the exception, but I feel like 5, 10, 15 years ago we weren't in the positions that we're in now. So I think it's also just about, like many of us said earlier, like we're up here because we are passionate and we love what we do, and we're authentic, and then we put in the work. Like I feel like we all had very different journeys that we came on, or that we've had to get to where we are today, but I feel like if you put in the work, thankfully, a lot of us, we had allies who helped us to get to where we are today, too. So I don't want that to stop people and say, oh, you guys are the exception. Like, it's hard. Because, no, we weren't here at one point. So I feel like it's possible for all of us.
Yeah. Is there another question?
Yes. Hi, my name is Ella Benaldi, and I'm in second-year sport media here at Ryerson. And I knew coming into this program that I was going to be in a drastically minority in the program. So we have, I think, 16 girls and 53 boys. And I'm really lucky. But I'm really lucky to have a good female support system, like the girl sitting beside me, and even Laurel is a professor. And I found in our program the women are very supportive, but sometimes with the boys it can be difficult and feel like you're trying to prove yourself all the time. And I am worthy of a spot, and you should pick me for your group because I do have things to give to this group, right? So I was wondering if you have any tips for, not so much about going into a job like you were saying about even just buying the team, not so much that high yet, but more so about what can we do at a low level to see more equality and not feel like you have to prove yourself in every situation.
And I don't think that's a low level. I just think it's just what women have to deal with, young women, just women have to deal with, in school, in the workplace, just, proving that they have a voice and their voice is valid. So I'll let Shireen.
Yeah, sports media is an incredibly amazing place. It's super frustrating, but I'm so glad there's 16 of you. Like, I was just at NASH, a student journalism conference in Vancouver, and I always do one-on-one critiques with students, and I'm so happy to see that this year's 3 young women that were interested, which was amazing. So I'll just give you a little tip. I can't believe I'm going to say this publicly, but I will, just because you're here. And particularly because one of my editors is actually here, so that's all good. Hey, Dan. This doesn't apply to you, by the way. What you can do, practically speaking, is this is what I do, because as you were asking about what do you do when they just don't get it, you can sit down with someone and be like, listen, you were such a great ally. Thank you so much for empowering women with your knowledge. And then they're like, oh, wow. It's like basically giving them cookies, but not really giving them cookies. So you can kind of try that, because that's always worked. There was one editor, he was in England, and he was not getting what I was trying to do. And I was finally like, listen, thank you so much. You were the reason intersectional feminism is still standing. And he was like, yeah, you can have whatever price point you want. I'm like, there we go. Thank you so much. Like, really. Like, sometimes you got to play a little psychological game. Like, you know what I mean? Shoot your shot. Be a little coy. Be sort of creative in the way you approach things. But at the end of the day, they don't want you in their group. Fuck them. Make your own.
On that note, no. Next question. I love it. That's all right. I want to put that on a T-shirt. Who?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Winta. I work as a physiotherapist, and I also coach mostly in boys basketball at the high school and AAU level. And my question for you all is sort of how are you balancing your professional careers and your personal careers? Because, you know, it looks very different from, you know, your peers, your male peers, you know, your role as a woman, maybe as a mother, as a spouse, as potentially caretaker to parents. How does that look for you, and how do you balance it?
Does one person want to take that? Just because I think we might be short on time if everybody answers that. So is there one person that is burning to answer that?
Yeah, great question. I think there's different levels and different demands depending on what we all do. And we all obviously have very demanding jobs. But it was funny, I was having this conversation with one of my colleagues the other day, and we were talking about how, you know, she gets asked frequently, she's married, and she was like, it's so funny, like, people ask me all the time, how's your husband dealing with you being on the road all the time? And she's like, he's dealing. Like, how many of my male colleagues have ever been asked, how's your wife deal with? None of them, because of what society's put on what role we have. But we touched on self-care, like, it's so huge. You have to find the time to do something for yourself and by yourself, and or whatever that looks like, whatever people matter to you most, like, find the time to connect with those people. It's really easy to get caught up in your professional career. It's really easy to kind of lose touch with why you started, and things that can bring you back to your why, things that can bring you back to yourself. And it's all about, how do you know who you are, or how do you come back to yourself if you don't know who you are? You have to spend time with yourself. You have to really, really have a sense of self, and that will ground you a little bit and help balance it out. But it's a daily battle. Like, I'm gonna be honest. Like, it's a daily battle, but it's really, really important. So I'm really happy you brought it up.
Okay, I'm gonna piggyback off Winta's question, and thank you guys for hosting. This is absolutely amazing. So I recently went to an event called We Rise Brunch. And there was a comment that was made and the announcer said slasher. And she meant that women are like moms /this. And I know, Shireen, you mentioned about like being in your career late. How have you guys gotten into your positions knowing that, oh man, I'm really good at that, but I'm really good at this? Like, how do you go and do both? Or was there a tipping point of like, I have to commit to this and I will never go back to that?
How many hats do you wear?
Right. You know, I always say, like, people ask me why I do so many things or how I've gotten to do so many things. And I say, because being a female athlete is a full-time hustle. You have to have like 47 jobs, right? I mean, and that's on an easy day, right? And I lovingly say, maybe that's why I wore 47, because everybody always asks, because it was how many jobs I had. My life for a long time was work by day, play football by night, and go to school by very late night. And I knew I was going to have to create a unique value proposition in the space of sports because there was no place for anybody like me. Right? There was not a career path for women in football, and yet I had this amazing practical experience as being one of the best in the world, though I was being paid $1 a game, right? Imagine that. So what do? Your hustle gets hard, right? Like, I mean, my football picture was on my business cards, and I was making my business cards, and I was my press agent, and I was the assistant to the whoever needed to be called that day or who needed to make it sound fancy, right? So that struggle or that challenge that sometimes we have as a female athlete along the way has actually made me exactly who I am, is this multi-talented person, right? Like, I have coached in the NFL. I have written a book. I am in Madden, and I have a nail polish, right? Like, and I love that for women because I think it's something that we need to know. You don't have to just check off one box, right? You can be a slasher. Like she said, I have a chapter in my book about being an and, not an or. And something that's always resonated with me is, you know, we romanticize the Renaissance man. We do. He's a Renaissance man. He's good at everything. He does all of these things. There's no equivalent term for a woman. In fact, back in the Renaissance, we were wearing corsets. No wonder we couldn't do as much as they did. We couldn't breathe. Right? So I think that multi-dimensional self that is a wonderful characteristic that a lot of women have is something that will help you be great in so many things. I don't think, even in sports research, like I'll put on my doctor hat, like the specialization of sports so early is one of the main components that lays out later into identity foreclosure and often identity crisis at a point when an athlete gets injured. You know, the psychological impact of a career-ending or threatening injury to an athlete is the death of a close family member. That's how hard we take it. And yet, what helps in situations like that is being multidimensional. Because if I'm not a football player, what am I? Right? And your time will shift. There is no such thing as life balance, right? That's
choices.
Right, like that's Bigfoot, right? It doesn't exist. But where you put your time and energy at certain points will shift, and it's about finding the best balance that, you know, there is for you in the process.
So I think we have time for one last question.
Last question right here.
No pressure.
Hi, ladies. Thank you so much. My name is Caroline Wiley. I'm the founder of SeeWhatSheCanDo.com with Tina Finelli here. My question to you is a little bit different. What I'd love to get your sense on is, what role do you ladies think coaches play in helping young girls think of themselves as sports fans, as athletes? Because so often they drop out too soon, or they don't see themselves in the stands, or they don't see value in who they are as fans. So how do we, change the messaging as coaches to help young girls see themselves as sports fans and as sports athletes? What role do you think you guys can play in that? Changing.
Does one person want to take that on? Really quick. Okay, and then we'll probably,
Just wanted to say there's many different ways for girls to be in sports. It's officiating, it's coaching, it's playing, but sometimes the emphasis is always on playing. But if we let them know at a young age, it can be many things. It can be like doing like physio on the side, doing that kind of stuff. Like there's very many different ways that we can all be involved in the sports community. It doesn't just have to be on the starting line. And then providing those ideas for young girls. Say if you don't see yourself doing this, maybe you can do this. Like just to keep connected somehow. That's just a really quick answer.
Did you want to add something? Yeah, okay.
I remember when I was working on the Keep Playing Like a Girl campaign, and there was some research. 7 out of 10 girls felt that they didn't belong in sports. 7 out of 10 girls felt that society didn't support them in sports. And 7 out of 10 girls said there are not enough visible female role models in sport. And then 5 out of 10 would opt out of sport, I think by the time they finished puberty. So part of that to me is the answer isn't just the messaging. The answer is letting them see women at all levels, right? And as the people boots on the ground, whether it's with males or females, to let them realize that playing is a win in and of itself, right? It's a win for your confidence. It's a win for, the emotional impact that it has, right? The confidence that will give you, but also, the psychological benefits of exercise in and of itself. And that being there and being active, that you do belong. There are career paths, but it doesn't just have to be one way. And the increased professionalism in sports has contributed significantly to a lot of the burnout, right? You have to specialize early, and you need to play all of the AAU tournaments so that you will be on path to get to the right college, to get the right scholarship, to do all of this stuff. And it has changed the fact that we are playing a game, and this should be fun, right? You can have a great, productive, spot on, training accomplished practice that doesn't have to feel like death, right? Those practices should be fun. And also for girls, one of the big things that keeps them in sports is fostering the relationships, right? They may not want to go to practice one day, but boy, I'll tell you what, if I'm going to go into the trenches, I want to go with my best friend, and I'm going to see her there. So even the intentional connection of the players within your team to helping them have good sports relationships is part of it. And then part of the way that you can do where you show the other aspects of sports, and I did this with One Team One, was, how do you engage the last person on the team? She may not be the captain, she may not be the spotlight, but what if you weren't great and you were a great artist and you got to design the mascot? And then we see this beautiful image that is our team mascot, and we're all gonna rally around it, and we know you created it, right? There are lots of ways that we can create spaces in sport for people to feel wonderful. And when you feel wonderful, and those benefits vary very much from one person to the next, that's what the core value has to be. And then finding ways to amplify that with whatever you do, and still developing the skills along the way.
Well, with that being said, that was great questions. Thank you guys again for being on the panel. We have a few gifts for you. Well, thank you guys so much. I encourage you to connect with like-minded folks in the room, or anybody you wanted to engage with. Get in front of the Step and Repeat banner, take a selfie, take a picture. Let me know and let us know how are you being bold in 2020. And stay tuned for our future She's4Sports GXS Lab events. We're going to be holding 3 more events this year, so check out the She's4Sports.com website, or we're always on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and I know the GXS Lab will also be posting stuff online about our future events, so thanks so much.